Hello everyone, this is Being Medico. Our today's topic is Norma basalis. Anterior part of Norma basalis is this, middle part of Norma basalis and posterior part of Norma basalis. Anterior part of Norma basalis divided into two. First is alveolar arch and the second is hard palate. Hard palate is now classified into three criterias. First, formation. Formation anterior two-third is formed by the palatine processes of maxilla, and posterior one-third it is formed by the horizontal processes of palatine bone. Sutures, cruciform sutures and intermaxillary sutures, dome shaped, incisive foramen, and third criteria is dome shaped. It is dome shaped and this is incisive foramen. It includes incisive foramen and greater palatine foramen. Greater palatine foramen you can see here, this is greater palatine foramen and below this is lesser palatine foramen, and this is palatine crest. Now we come to the middle part. This is extended from the posterior part, posterior border of hard palate, posterior border of hard palate, posterior border of hard palate to the transverse line passing through the anterior margin of foramen magnum. To the transverse line passing through the anterior margin of foramen magnum. This is foramen magnum, so anterior margin here. This part is the middle part. So it is further divided into two, median and laterally. We will now study the median parts. So then median, here it is vomer, which divides posterior nasal apertures. These are posterior nasal apertures. These are posterior nasal apertures. And this is vomer. This is vomer. And beneath it, inside of it, there is vomerovaginal canal and palatovaginal canal. Vomerovaginal canal and palatovaginal canal, which is laterally. You can remember it as PIL. P for palatovaginal canal and L for laterally. So now we will have lateral area shows two parts of sphenoid bone, pterygoid processes. These are pterygoid processes. This is lateral pterygoid and this is medial pterygoid. So we can see here three bones also: petrous, temporal and tympanic. Petrous, temporal and tympanic. Temporal, petrous and tympanic. Now infratemporal surface of greater wing of sphenoid. Lateral area has infratemporal surface of greater wing of sphenoid. Anterior, this is the infratemporal surface of greater wing of sphenoid. Infratemporal surface of greater wing of which is anterior margin. Anterior margin is connected with the posterior border of infraorbital fissure. This is infraorbital fissure. Then anterior margin of the greater wing of sphenoid is connected to the posterior border of infraorbital fissure. This is, we can see here, this is infraorbital fissure. Then next we come to other feature is posterior lateral margin. Posterior lateral margin. Posterior lateral margin is here connected to the squamous temporal. Posterior lateral margin. And posterior medially there is petrous bone connected to it. Posterior medially there is a petrous bone connected to the greater wing of sphenoid. And posterior anterior medially there is pterygoid processes. We have seen here anterior medially this is pterygoid processes. So this was infratemporal surface of greater wing of sphenoid, which comes under lateral area. Now we have next inferior surface of petrous bone. Inferior surface of petrous bone is here. This is the inferior surface. So it includes foramen lacerum. This is foramen lacerum. This is foramen lacerum and carotid canal. This is carotid canal and squamous. Now the tympanic part of temporal bone and squamous part of the temporal bone. Tympanic part is this. This is tympanic part and squamous part of temporal bone and squamous part of temporal bone. Now posterior part, we come to now the posterior part. Posteriorly, one thing is left. This is foramen ovale and this is foramen spinosum, which comes under the part of the lateral area. And now we will move on to the next, which is posterior part of Norma basalis. So posterior part of Norma basalis is divided into two, median and lateral area. Median area shows from before backwards, and foramen magnum, the largest foramen, it is also called the largest. External occipital crest, this is external occipital crest, and there is external occipital protuberance, this is external occipital protuberance, and this is the crest, and these are nuchal lines. You can see here this is nuchal lines. This is superior nuchal lines and this is inferior nuchal lines, and this is crest. Now lateral area include condylar part of occipital bone, squamous part of occipital bone, and jugular foramen. This is here jugular foramen. You can see here jugular foramen and styloid process. Here we have, this is styloid process of temporal bone. So this was the gross anatomy of the Norma basalis.